Welcome to the 6 Miles to Supper podcast. I'm your host, Kayla Cox, and I've lost over 80 pounds with intermittent fasting 6 days a week, eating whatever I wanted at my meals, taking a cheat day every Sunday, and walking 6 miles a day. And I'm here to help you on your weight loss journey. In today's episode, I'm going to talk about how my step goal helped me to lose weight. So an 80-pound weight loss journey is complex. There's so many moving parts, and sometimes in hindsight, it's difficult to really know, what could I have done that wasn't really necessary, and what could I have done that was truly necessary? What made the difference between failure and success? And this is a question I get a lot. A lot of people, on my YouTube lives will ask me, do you need to walk the 6 miles a day? Would you have lost the weight if you didn't walk 6 miles a day? And I think it's a good question. And the truth is, I don't know. I can't go back in time because so much has changed for me. The weight loss journey does change you. It changes your discipline levels, I think. And there's so many things. It's hard to know, like, what could you have left out and what could you have kept in? But I've thought a lot about it. And I do feel like having my step goal really did help me to lose weight, but probably not for the reasons that you would think. The thing I want to point out first is I don't think it has to do with the calorie burn. Now, I understand that I do burn calories by walking the 6 miles a day. Absolutely, I do. If I was, not walking the 6 miles and just sitting there, I would be burning fewer calories. However, when you move more, your appetite also increases. So there is a little bit of a back and forth in my head about, how helpful was it as, just from a, calorie burn perspective. Probably not very, because I am walking slowly, probably like 3 miles per hour, maybe less sometimes. I mean, it really depends on my mood and my energy levels and stuff. There are days where my 6 miles, I'm sure, are much slower. And there are some days where maybe it's a little bit quicker, but generally speaking, 3 miles per hour is probably the maximum speed that I'm walking. But again, because, I do know that I'm hungry. I mean, people are just naturally hungrier. If you're more active, your appetite increases. So I feel like it might even almost cancel it out, almost. But I think there are other reasons why my step goal really did help me to lose weight. So let me just give you a little bit of history about my step goal. In 2014, the very end of that year, around Christmas time, that's when I got my first Fitbit. And I, at that time, really did think, I'm an active person. And so I got the Fitbit, I put it on, didn't change my behavior at all. And I thought I'll easily get in 10,000 steps every day just by virtue of being a mom with young kids. And what I found, though, over those first couple of days was I was very sedentary. I was not at all getting even anything close to the 10,000 recommended steps that people were talking about at that time. And so I thought, that's really interesting. Maybe there's a little bit of a disconnect between how much I move versus how much I think that I move, which was, that might sound like a small thing, but it was actually really helpful because it gave me more self-awareness. And when I became self-aware about how sedentary I was, I also, I think, became more open to being more aware of things like how much am I eating and how much stress eating am I doing? Like it just kind of gave me more of the ability to be self-aware and to realize, hey, you might be wrong. You might think you're not eating very much, but maybe you're eating more than you think, just like you were moving less than you think. So in 2015, as time went on, I wasn't too focused on the step goal. I had a Fitbit that I wore, all the time, every day, but I didn't have a step goal. I was just more in the mindset of I've got to go to the gym and just work out really hard. And I've got to burn these calories. And, I was lifting really heavy. I was doing lots of really intense cardio. And then I hurt my back. And when I hurt my back, the only exercise that I felt like I could do without it being too painful was to walk. At that time, I was really afraid of just going back to being sedentary, because I thought, even though I hadn't lost much weight, I didn't want to go back to being like how I had been, which was very sedentary, very inactive. And so I decided, I need to have a step goal at least. At that time, it kind of felt like the bare minimum, like this is the bare minimum, but I need to stick with it. So I picked 6 miles. Because to me, it was like, well, I feel like I can make time for that. I knew I could make time for that because I knew how much time it took, to get myself to the gym, to go to the gym and actually work out, and then to get back and shower and all that stuff. So I was like, okay, I can do 6 miles during that same amount of time, and I can be, at home with my kids and stuff like that. So from that point on, like towards the end of 2015 and on through, that was really when I became consistent with my steps. And so in 2016, in January of that year, that's when I really got consistent with intermittent fasting. And that's when the weight loss really started to work. So when it was just a step goal, because I would say by the end of 2015, it was really like all I was really being consistent with was my steps, and my eating was all over the place. And I was regaining the weight. And at first I was kind of blaming that on, it's just because I injured my back and it's that not going to the gym and working out hard. But what I started to see was it was just I was eating too much. And when I looked back at my records, I saw, when I'm being consistent with intermittent fasting, it's working. So let's try that. And that's when I wrote down my plan. And my plan was very simple. It was intermittent fasting 6 days a week, walk 6 miles a day, cheat day on Sunday. I mean, it was just very, very simple, but I got very consistent with it. And what I found was hitting my step goal every day reinforced the intermittent fasting. And it also worked the other way. So what I mean by that is walking 6 miles, it takes time. It takes effort. And so when I put in the effort, because usually I knew like, okay, I need to kind of start on working on getting these steps in early in the morning and throughout the day. It took effort. It took a little bit of planning, like, okay, when am I going to get my steps in today? And then because I had made that effort, it made me want to stick with the intermittent fasting. Like, well, hey, I'm not going to walk 6 miles and then, just eat during the fasting window. So it kept me more disciplined. On the other hand, though, staying disciplined with the eating, I think helped me stay disciplined with the walking, because it was like, well, but I'm doing this intermittent fasting thing, so I want to keep up this other thing too, which is I'm going to do both parts of the plan. And so on those days, I guess, where it felt like, intermittent fasting was the easier of the two, it kind of gave me that extra motivation to walk the 6 miles. And then on the other hand, on those days where the walking felt easier, it kept me more consistent with the intermittent fasting, which ultimately is what brought the weight off. When I'm talking about the walking, I know people think, well, it's 2 hours a day, basically, of walking. I mean, I break it up and I count every step I get throughout the day. So it's not like I'm necessarily going for a 2-hour walk every single day. It's just like getting up and moving around more. Even if that just means like walking from one end of my house to the other. And so it's not 2 hours in the traditional sense that you might think. But at the same time, I can understand people wanting to know, like, well, is this really necessary? And I do think for me, it was necessary because it kept me consistent. Like being consistent with your plan, no matter what the plan is the important part of weight loss. And so walking, hitting that step goal, helped keep me consistent, and being consistent brought off the weight and has kept off the weight. And, a part of that, I think, is that it was something I could control. The thing about weight loss is that your weight, or at least my weight, I don't know about your weight, but my weight will go up and down and up and down. And it's just not a straight line down. It's just not like, like when I was, let's say I was over 200 pounds, but I was trying to get under 200. I mean, sometimes it would be like, okay, it's, at 202, and then the next day it's like 201, and then the next day it's like 201.6, and then the next day is maybe like 202, but then the next day after that it's like 200.8. And so I learned, like I can't control that number. Like I don't have the ability to fine tune myself that much so that I know exactly what I'm going to weigh in the morning. It'll be fluctuating a little bit. I can control the downward trend, but not the daily number. But the daily number I could control was my steps. I could control, I'm going to get at least 14,000 steps today. And another thing my step goal did was it got me physically away from the temptation of food. During the fasting window, there are times when food is just tempting. It's like, hey, I'm not doing anything else. A sandwich would be really good right now. But if you're doing intermittent fasting, you don't do that. You don't eat. So how do you not eat? Well, what I found was getting outside, going for a walk, or even just the act of standing up and saying, I'm going to get some steps in instead because I don't have my steps in yet. It just helped. It was like, okay, the temptation was gone once I started to stand up and walk around. And something I certainly started to notice over time was that walking put me in a good mood. Just the getting up and being active and hitting a goal. And I'm not sure which one was more important. I don't know if it was the physically, walking 6 miles, or if it was the you're hitting a goal type thing that was more helpful, but it put me in a good mood. And I cannot overstate the importance of being in a good mood while you're trying to lose weight, figuring out the things that you can do on a daily basis that will keep you motivated, that will keep you feeling good and in the right headspace, because it is such a mental game. And walking just does that. It's almost impossible for me to be in a bad mood after I've walked my 6 miles. It just is. Like I mean, it's possible. If I'm in a truly foul mood, I can go out there and I can come back in a bad mood, but even on those days, my mood has greatly improved. So it's just helpful. It's so helpful to be in a good mood. And I think a big piece of that too is that walking gave me the time to think things through, especially, in those times where I was stressed out about something. And normally what I would have done had I not been doing intermittent fasting and not had a step goal, I would have just eaten, like I was stressed out about whatever. So let's go have a snack and think things over. And that's what got me to being obese. But when you can't do that because you're intermittent fasting and it's like, well, I can't eat right now, but I can go get my steps in, then you can go think about things. And I found I think much better on a walk than I do if I just sit somewhere. And so going for that walk gave me the opportunity to instead of just react and just eat something, I had to think things through and to start to kind of understand, what was causing, this situation, or what was causing my stress, or even, exactly why am I even feeling this way? Because sometimes I would just, be feeling, maybe upset for a reason I just didn't even know. I'm just kind of feeling upset. And that was really helpful too. Learning about myself, like, oh, I'm really stressed out about, fill in the blank money, or, I'm just worried in general about things. And then learning that I could, because I was walking, I could then think through, okay, what's some action that I could take? And, I'm not going to eat. So eating can be a really big distraction, and it can make you feel like you did something when you really didn't. But instead, since I was just walking, it would give me time to kind of process things and think through ideas about how I could solve these problems. And it was really helpful. And it made it so that these situations that normally would have just cropped up and stressed me out continually and made it so that I would overeat, I was working through them, and I was, taking action on them. And so over the course of time, when I was losing the weight, I did learn these things. And when I got down to my goal weight, and that was at the end of 2016, my first goal weight that I hit, I was like 157, 158, which was, still a couple of pounds above normal BMI, the body mass index. So it's technically a couple of pounds overweight at that point, but I just felt really good there. And I thought, I'm going to maintain, because traditionally I knew that normally that's where I had problems, was I could get the weight off, but then I could not keep it off. So I was really wondering, should I keep walking? Because again, 2 hours a day of walking, that's a lot of time commitment. And, should I do this? And so I decided, I'm going to experiment. I'm going to take some time and and not. And, but I'll also, kind of do split tests. I'll have some days where I walk, some days where I won't walk. And what I noticed was that I was just in a much better mood on those days that I walked. And the really weird thing was I got a lot more accomplished on the days where I walked. And that seems totally bizarre because it's like, but there's 2 hours of walking in there. So how is that happening? But walking, that step goal gave me structure. And because it gave me this time to just think and to plan out my day and to plan out goals, to really think about like, what do I want to do with my time and how should I best use my time? Whereas on those days where I didn't do my step goal, it was just kind of like I'd wake up and then because there wasn't that goal that I was focused on hitting, there was just this lack of structure and just kind of like I just didn't get very much accomplished. So I continued to walk my 6 miles. It only took like maybe that first year of really experimenting before I really saw, okay, the step goal, even if it's not for the calorie burn per se, it's good to have there. It's good for the structure in my day to keep me in a good mood and to, to keep me disciplined, I think. And what I found over the course of these years is that I am still naturally a sedentary person. I have the interest in things in my day that are really inactive. If left to my own devices, I could just spend all day reading and drawing and sitting and doing puzzles and sitting and doing crosswords. And that's, that's really what I would do. I would not get very many steps in at all. I'm not a naturally active person. My husband, on the other hand, never stopped moving. The guy just, he's always up moving around doing something, and I'm just not. So that's why I continue to keep the step goal because it keeps me, I think, disciplined. It keeps me active, which I do think is important for health. I think that at the end of the day, health-wise, you're better off being active rather than sedentary. So that's why I keep doing it. Since 2018, I've been very consistent with my step goal. The one difference that I do, that I've been doing since the end of 2018, maybe the beginning of 2019, I decided to go to 6 miles a day, 6 days a week. And that was just a choice that I made because I was already taking it, Sundays off from fasting. So I kind of thought, I think I would like it to just have 1 day a week, with no step goal. I didn't feel like that would be too much or too little. And that's the balance that I found that works for me. So I hope that if you right now are thinking about, a step goal, it maybe appeals to you on some level, or maybe you're having trouble with intermittent fasting, or maybe you're having trouble, with the mental side of weight loss and how it's, it feels kind of out of your control sometimes. I would offer that a step goal can kind of show you have more control than you think, and it can help build that discipline in you. So I hope you found this episode helpful, and I'll see you in the next one.
Do you want to lose the weight without getting rid of the foods you love and that you'll go back to eating again anyway? My book, The Laid Back Guide to Intermittent Fasting, teaches you how to practice intermittent fasting so that you lose the weight sustainably and keep it off for good. You can get the audiobook read by me for free when you sign up for your 30-day trial of Audible. The link is in the show notes. And if you've gotten value from this podcast and you'd like to let other people know about it, it would be great if you could leave a review on either iTunes or wherever you get your podcast. Thanks.